I was talking to my daughter actually yesterday, and we were talking about back to school and clothes and all that stuff. And she's like, Dad, going back to school is all about the glow up. The GLO-UP, the glow up. I'm like, what is that?
Welcome to It's All Money. Your hosts are right here in front of you. We're checking out It's All Money.
Couple of dads with a couple of kids, and guess what? Open up your wallet.
It's just like Christmas time, same deal, but it's back to school.
And and you're paying nonetheless.
That's right.
Welcome to It's All Money, and as we're recording this, back to school is around the corner. And the idea with this show is looking at how money intersects with your life. And sometimes that is the big stuff. It's the macroeconomic stuff. It's the accounts. It's the investments. And other times it's the budgetary items and the seasonal things that eventually end up hitting your checking account. And that is the case with back to school, which is, as of 2024, hitting record highs, just like all of the prices. Yeah. So this episode, we wanted to look at what are some of the current prices? What are people paying? What are some strategies for people who want to pay less? And this is unexpected, but why? Why back to school is so expensive? And I have a theory that has nothing to do with the economy. So MarketWatch.com pulled some great stats from them. Families, here we go, Daren. This is the number right now. Families, so this is including multiple kids. This is the 2.5 kids, right? This isn't just one child, but this is
2.5.
families. Families of high school age children expect to spend families of elementary to high school age children expect to spend an average of $875 on clothing, shoes, electronics, and school supplies for back to school. That number is actually slightly down from $890 last year, which I don't believe, because it actually feels more expensive this year than last year, but I'm not going to nitpick.
But if you're going to take a victory lap on $15, you just go right ahead and do that.
Right. This is according to the National Retail Foundation. Okay, so how does that break out? What are people paying? So the majority of that is going to clothes. So $423 on average for apparel, $253 for the clothes. Here's the mind-blowing part. $170 for shoes.
Well, so let me interrupt for a sec, because Dan, that makes perfect sense. I was talking to my daughter actually yesterday, and we were talking about back to school and clothes and all that stuff, and she's like, Dad, going back to school is all about the glow up. The GLO-UP, the glow up. I'm like, what is that? And she's like, well, Dad, when you go back to school, you have to show that you've glowed up, that you're mature and that you're more hip and you're more cool. And I was like, I mean, I guess that's true. I can remember feeling that way as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's
like,
not new.
It's not new, but I've never heard the term, though. Have you heard the term?
Okay, so he mentioned this in pre-production.
Cool, yeah.
And I was like, I know a few more Gen Z terms than Daren. And Daren's just hearing glow up.
But I'm the kid that was raised by a hippie with no TV, so you have to mind you, I was definitely not in the cool vein.
I had heard glow up before.
Yeah, I hadn't,
and I think that is a driver behind all this stuff. Back to school is all about
right?
Like, boom!
Look at that person.
Here I am.
That's right. That's right.
So, and apparently that means you need $170 shoes.
Well, I mean, just the Jordans. My son, he loves Jordans. Like, he is like obsessed with Jordans. A pair of Jordans is like $170, man. Like, that's crazy.
Then it's right on. We're just going to cross out shoes and say it's actually $170 for Jordans. I'm going to write that
definitely
down.
Not the Payless shoe store.
No.
Shoe price.
Is Payless still a thing?
Maybe it did get bought out.
I think it went under. Let's see again. Yeah.
There you go.
You and I are throwbacks now. $309 for electronics, $140, which actually seems low.
Yeah,
What would you get for $309 for electronics? That's not a phone. That's not a computer. That number stunned me.
Well, just to agree, I was looking up graphing calculators. By the way, graphing calculators. Remember graphing calculators?
Yeah. I literally was handling one this weekend. I found my wife's old TI-89.
Right, and I was like, I'm just going to give my daughter my TI-89 because Why buy a new one? Let's see how they've advanced first, though, because there's probably a lot of functions that mine doesn't have that they now want for the kids. And I'm like, these are way cooler. We're buying you a new one, Brooklyn. But they're $100 and on sale. Otherwise, $125.
So what's different about the new ones?
The screen's just better. Like I always hated the screen. It was just like this very like faint black mark, and you have to like increase it and like. But they're new like white screens, and it's just easier. The functionality of it still does the same math, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to make you use my T-89, whatever it was. We'll get you a new one.
When I was in school, I'm actually shocked that the new one is only $100 because that's how much it was when I was in school.
Right.
When I took Mr. Pillsbury's calculus
Mr.
class
Pillsbury,
at Casa
that's right.
Grande.
Shout out to Pillsbury.
The greatest calculus teacher in the world. I went to college the next year and had the same calculus class, and it was way more confusing. I was like, Mr. Pillsbury explained this a lot better. But anyways, but when I took his class, suddenly it was like everyone was talking about this graphing calculator I had to get, and it was $100. But then you could get it used for $100. People, I mean, graphing calculators were a full-on industry unto itself, like black market, pre-eBay.
You still have yours, right?
I still have. I literally found my wife because I was like, I'm going to hold on to this. This is going to hold value.
Right.
So when I found my wife's, I was actually excited because I was like, either these things are a brick and are going to work forever. I'm going to give it to my son who'll probably need it in 10 years, not even probably less. Or B, I'll just go on eBay and sell it. Well, I was like, great, I'll just sell this on eBay for $100, $20, $19.99 on eBay for a TI-89.
That's depreciation. That is a sinking asset.
Correct.
Is what we call.
Correct. So
But
just
Dan,
something to think about.
I just want you to know how excited I am. I'm going to actually relearn how to use a graphing calculator this year, because I'm sure my daughter's going to come home with homework that she has no clue what to do. And poor me is going to sit there with the YouTube. So talk to me in 6 months and I'll show you how to use the graphing calculator.
Is she doing geometry? What's the class?
I mean, I was shocked. She's going to 8th grade and they want a graphing calculator. So I don't know. The Common Core curriculum they do now it's crazy, man. Like trying to figure out what they're actually doing. I consider myself a reasonably smart guy.
You literally work with numbers in the stock market.
And I'm like looking at this stuff what are they doing?
My son showed me 4th grade math, and I'm like, hey, yeah, I got a 5 on my AP calculus. Right. Mr. Pillsbury, what is this stuff? So I'm lost there too.
Like,
right.
Oh, long division? Let me do that again.
All right, so the final numbers are averaging about $141 then for actual school supplies, the basic stuff, paper and pencils. Interesting, depending on where you are, a new category that has popped up on the back to school cost are cleaning products, either COVID related, sanitation stuff, or in some cases, Kleenex and basics that you would kind of expect in the classroom. Some states, some counties across America have had funding challenges, and they've thrown it back on students to fill in some of those gaps. So some of the back to school list and some of the back to school costs are costs that used to be picked up by the school that are now falling on parents.
Wait, are you saying, Dan, that not all our tax money actually makes it to the classroom?
It's possible.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Daren.
it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. No comment.
But it is interesting. Like we literally just bought wipes for the classroom. We bought paper towels.
So you're
for
doing
kids.
it then.
We're doing it. Yeah, like this is on the list. It's like you buy the wipes, you buy the paper towels, you buy the pens. Like we're buying stuff for the classroom, and that's on the expected list. You show up first day and you got a bag full of goodies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. College students, we didn't go too heavy on that, but college students can expect to pay even more. They're planning to spend $1,364. So a dramatic increase to go back to school. I didn't get details on that, but I'm wondering if some of that is books too. So books in college, I just remember being through the roof, although maybe some of them are digital now. All of this to say, so the average, again, back to the average that American families are expecting to spend on back to school is $875. But I'd like to remind you that 49% of households in America cannot afford a $1,000 emergency. So, I mean, it's pretty well near what someone might have for an emergency fund. The source on that was CNBC, by the way.
So funny story real quick. College professor, my dad's in college. His college professor says, here, you need to buy these 3 books. They all go out and buy these books. They buy this one book. This one book has the college professor's name on it. He says, oh, that's my book. Go ahead and rip out page 50 in there. That's the only page you'll need. Throw away the book. You don't use the rest of the time. I'm like, what? My dad was like, all the guy was doing is making money off it, right? So these college professors sometimes will just say, buy these books because they're making money off it.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? When he told me that story, I'm like, and this guy was still allowed to teach, and this is way back when. And
wow,
I was just blown away. So I've always, ever since that story, been a little bit distrusting of the college professors.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. You want to take some of these stats? It doesn't have to be all. Oh, you have the NerdWallet ones. So I want to compare. So the number. So again, the number is an average of today 860. Wait, where'd the number go? I lost it. $875 average cost of going back to school. The average cost in 2007, Daren, was $563, buddy.
Wow.
How about that?
That's inflation.
Just since 2019, it was $697. So we're up 24% from that. And so you're just seeing dramatic increases in cost. And this is when we have several times just in the young history of this show, we've talked about inflation. We've talked about outpacing inflation. What a great isolated example that if you had kept money in a checking account, for example, in 2019, because I'm going to pay for all my expenses out of this, right? You're not making any money in your checking account.
That's right.
Well, why do you need to be making money for your checking account? Because literally in 2019, you were paying $697, and now in 2024, you're paying $875. And that's the facts. Like, that's the way that it hits your checking.
Well, in the reality, if you had $1,000, it is not in real terms $1,000 anymore. And that's one of the mind blowers. People put $1,000 in. I got $1,000, feels good, but really you're only getting $800 worth of goods now.
It's
right?
really, really, really hard for me to conceptualize when I hear that, because I'm like, I mean, maybe in the past, but not now.
Right.
Just something about me just doesn't believe that prices will go up. Here it is right here.
That's
It
right.
goes, it's going up.
In a meaningful way, right? Because this is crazy. 10% of parents expect, and this is, I can't even believe this is reality, but 10% of parents expect to go into debt just to buy school supplies. Like, that's crazy to me, right? And 20% of parents buying school supplies, they're actually doing that thing where you click the buy now, pay later, that button that shows up on Amazon or whatever you buy now.
The Nouveau layaway.
Which is a total trap, right? And should be a consumer crime, but whatever.
Is that from the NerdWallet study?
That's the NerdWallet stuff, right? So back to school is a big business, right? So guess this, $135.5 billion going back to school, right? So what do you think is going to be coming at you in the media? What do you think is going to be coming at you in advertisements?
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be in our face. What do you think is going to happen? If you have kids on social media, you're going to see back to school shopping. You know those cookie things that follow you all around the internet? If it knows you got kids, guess what's popping up on your feed?
Right.
Back to school, buddy. We're going to get $1,000 out of you because you're on social media more. Right? That's how it works, right? Let's see. If you combine college spending, it's $189 billion. I mean, that's big business. Spending between 2019 and 2023 per child is up 15%, adjusting for inflation. Spending per child actually decreased. So now there's a mind blower. So while it's costing you more when you adjust for inflation, it's actually up 3%. Play that math back for me.
Right.
Right. And that's the tricky thing. Like $1,000 is not $1,000, and it changes, right?
So this is a stat I wanted to hit too, which is that, so you mentioned 10%. This is according to a survey from NerdWallet. 10% of parents surveyed said they expect to go into debt for school shopping. They expect it. It's just going to happen. What is that number, Brendan? Sorry. 6?
15.
I'm dumb. So 10% of parents surveyed expect to go into debt. But in the same survey, 42% of parents say that they would go into debt to help their children fit in at school. Meaning,
That's wild.
these costs, according to the survey, and in my belief, have very little to do with the functional need to actually be at school and write on a piece of paper so you can turn it in for an assignment so you can get a grade and get out of there with a diploma. It has more to do with fitting in. These are social costs, a huge portion and a huge piece, just like you talked about with the glow up, is about the social aspect, making an impression, making friends, meeting a girl, all of these things. That is what I believe is fueling some of these rising prices.
Well, but is it really that surprising if you think about it? Like, look at the general American population. You have this better than the Jones next door, right? Think about all the people that are families in massive amounts of debt. It's just what's happening in the American dream at a lower scale. We're training our kids from a very early age. Hey, 40% of us, we're going into debt just to impress the neighbor. And that's normal, right? I was talking to a couple the other day, and they're just like, I don't get it. Like, we're working so hard. We're doing this stuff. We're saving this money. We're buying these apartment buildings. We're buying these houses, and we're renting our house. And I talked to all my friends, and they're living in this big house, rich, whatnot. And it just feels awful. And like, yeah, but the thing is, like, you just don't know what kind of debt that person has. You don't know what they're really living in. And because I can tell you as a financial planner, a lot of people our age especially, they're living in debt. Like, they're up to debt in their gills, and there's no way they're getting ahead. They got their college debt, their house debt, their car debt, and they're still trying to make their kids fit in and get some more debt. And that's why I think the generations that are not the baby boomers are so disenfranchised with the current regimes, because that's really happening is everyone's getting retired, staying retired, and stacking the next generation with debt. They're literally breaking America. It is not sustainable, the course we're on. So the antidote to that, right? The antidote to that thinking is to tell yourself and to play a different game. And that's what, like, Dave Ramsey, who you know really well, what Dave Ramsey teaches, whether you like his politics, religion, or whatever, I don't really care. But what he's teaching people is to play a different game. Mm-hmm. And you've got to play a different game. So when you see the person who's driving that BMW that really has no business affording a BMW, you have to look at that and say, you don't know the game they're playing. I know the game I'm playing, and I'm not playing that game, because that game right there, that ends up with bankruptcy.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I'm experiencing this right now with vacation FOMO. Yeah. So if you're going back to school right now, if your kid going back to school, and maybe you're feeling like you're not going to have your glow up, I'm not having a vacation glow up, Daren. I'm just seeing nothing but like multiple families taking multiple trips and tropical locations. And I'm just like, my family and I did some great trips, and I feel great about it. But we didn't go to Bora Bora or wherever it is. And so part of me is like, oh, how are they doing that? And then I go, oh yeah, they're doing that with their MasterCard, and they're going to be paying for that trip and all the other trips forever.
Right. Add the interest on that, and that's one expensive trip.
Correct. So to your point, if you're finding yourself feeling a little crushed by back to school costs and any costs in general, I would just encourage you to consider exactly what Daren's saying, which is play a different game. If you've got the money and you go back to school shopping and you want to get X, Y, and Z and you can afford it, go for it. That's another thing that's different about this show. It's not a judgment space per se if you can afford it, right? If you got the money to do back to school shopping and it's no big deal, great. Congratulations. You probably worked for that, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe if you're not and you're finding yourself in a place where you're feeling crushed by expenses, consider different options, and I'll give you an example. So I went to 2 stores to get what I would consider to be a very basic basket of goods for one of my sons. Just school supplies now. This isn't clothes, but just school supplies for one of my sons. My son Nolan, he's 9 years old, going to be 10. This is what I would consider to be basic stuff for him to go, quote, back to school, okay? I've got 17 items here. I've got 2 different types of poster board, including like a foam board, because that ends up coming up for like some kind of project. I've got a planner. I've got binder paper. I've got colored pencils. I've got markers. I've got scissors. I've got a pencil pouch. I've got glue. I've got scotch tape, heavy scotch tape. I got a package of pens. I got index cards. I got crayons, and I got pencils. I went to the dollar store. This photo that we're showing here on the screen, This is all items from the dollar store.
Which are $1.50 now, but anyway, we won't talk about that.
They're averaging between $1 and $1.25, right?
Okay.
So that is increasing, right? Okay, I'm gonna take it out. We got 17 items. I have my calculator here on my phone. 17 times 125, 2125. That's how much, if you emotionally, because some people, they would never consider going to the dollar store because it's like, oh my God, the dollar store.
That's social pressure you're talking about.
That's
there
exactly
it. Is again,
it.
Right?
So, but if you can get over that, you can get this stuff for $21.25. Now, much more socially acceptable, I went to a major retail store who shall remain nameless, but it's a big one in Petaluma. You can probably guess.
Red balls everywhere.
No comment. No names mentioned. And I got at said retail store nearly the exact same set of goods. Now, there's some variation here. I couldn't get exactly the same.
That monthly planning calendar is way more upgraded, though.
Well, I'll point that out. Actually, that's actually one of the things that was the most expensive. So I got nearly the same set of stuff.
So same functional stuff.
Correct. I got 2 pieces of poster board. I got the paper. I got the notebook. I got the pencils. It's near identical what I was able to get. Let's get out the calculator again, because the total for nearly the same basket of goods for the major retail store was $54.20 for an increase of 155%.
Wow.
And what was really interesting is the base stuff, the paper, the pencils, weren't really that much more. It was maybe 20 cents more. But some of the more goods that I'd say where they felt like they probably could get away with it, like the planner, which probably has, frankly, more binding and stuff like that. The planner at the
I did notice the Crayola, you've got 5 more markers.
Correct. That's what I said. Some of the price, some of the sizing was a little bit different. That planner was $9. And the other one was $1.25. So then you could ask yourself when you're buying that stuff, well, how bad do I need it to be bound? How bad do I need some of this stuff? Or do I just literally need a piece of paper with a printed calendar on it? So I thought that was really interesting. I thought it was a good example of if you're finding yourself in a challenging situation where you're feeling crushed by prices, just say, what can I get over? Or what can I change? Or what can I accept that might allow me to do this? Maybe not in the way that I wanted to, right? But in a way that it will allow me, what do I really need to do? I need to be in the seat. I need to have the paper. I need to have the pen. Do I need to impress everybody in the room? Probably not. But it feels cool to impress everybody in the room. So it's kind of hard, right? And it's hard to tell that to an 11-year-old kid.
Well, and so is that really any different than we do as adults, right? When you think about it, it's like, well, I need to drive from A to B. How many of us need that new car to drive from A to B? Most of us don't. The old car would work just fine to get from A to B. But we get new cars and we get new things because that's how our consumer-based system is designed, is to create that social pressure so we consume.
And so it's a microcosm for what's happening right now, right? It's back to school time, so we're talking about it. But it's also taps into a larger issue, something that you and I both believe in, which is just taking time to get to know and understand who you are, what's important to you, what you value, and then aligning the money that you have or the financial situation you have with that. And saying, okay, well, am I okay with getting stuff at the dollar store? Maybe you're not. Well, okay, then you need to change what you're doing to get more money, or maybe you are. You say, oh, I can save that right there. I'll get that done. And then I can use this excess money to do whatever it is that you want to do. But it's a case of you happening to your money and not necessarily the other way around.
That's right. And not being the victim to it, right? Mm-hmm. And figuring out there are ways to save. There are ways to make it in this economy, no doubt.
I got a couple quick hitters for you out the door.
All right, let's hit them.
I want to know about the small cap run of summer 2024 and what that means. Can you give me that in 60 seconds? Because that's all I'm hearing right now. I'm hearing NVIDIA is over. It double topped and there's a neck line and they broke the support. What are these phrases? What are we talking about?
I'll have to refer you to our other show on the markets to learn a lot more about that double top that I'm talking about. But so NVIDIA is a perfect example. For many years, we've now had concentration in the markets. What that means is just a few big companies are sucking all the oxygen out of the room and driving the markets higher. We have a cap-weighted market. Now, if you want to learn about that, go back on the markets, check that out in our other show. You can learn all about that. We talk about it in depth. Bottom line is these big companies getting bigger and these smaller companies not growing. So if you had a diversified portfolio in the past couple of years, you're frustrated with your portfolio because it's not going up like it would be if you just concentrated in those big tech stocks.
And big companies include Microsoft, NVIDIA, Tesla, Google,
Amazon,
Apple, or Alphabet, right? And small. Can you give me an example of a couple small cap companies that off the top of your head?
Well, ones that were small caps are just newer companies. So let me think of one that's coming on the top of my head. I don't know. There's so many of them. There's literally thousands of them.
Okay.
So the bottom line is these smaller companies haven't done well. Well, when interest rates go up, small companies don't do as well. Why don't they do as well? Because small companies have to survive on debt. They have to go get debt. Well, what happened, if you look at our last episode, to debt is the interest rates have gone up. So it's made it much more expensive to take out debt. So these smaller companies had a more difficult time. So what we've started to see in the economy is a slowing of the economy, and the Fed projecting, perhaps suggesting that they're going to start lowering rates. Well, that's very stimulative to small cap stocks in the short run. If they do it slowly, if they do too fast, that means we got a big recession on our hands. We got a lot of problems. But that's driving those small cap stocks up because, like, hey, this company's going to live to fight another day. Same as with like real estate. You've seen real estate start to improve and it's not done so well. Why? Because there's this thought that interest rates, and I'll say thought because we don't know, the interest rates are start lowering and that's driving it. But that tends to wear out over time. And one thing we do know about small caps, and you say, well, why should I own small caps in my portfolio? Because a lot of clients have been asking that question over the past couple of years. And the reason why is because when they do well, they do very well. And you can't time it and you can't get in quick enough when it happens. In fact, in like 3 days last week, I think small caps were up something like 5-6%. Don't quote me on that number, but it was significant in just 3 days. So moving your portfolio around that quick, most people don't even return calls that fast.
And that is actually why you and your business partner, Chris Sipes, have said to me, you almost always want something in your portfolio that sucks.
That's right.
Because that's your rainy day protection for when things flip. You've got that in your pocket.
Yeah.
And by the time it flips, it's way too late. By the time you hear the news, it's too late, right?
That's right.
Speaking of which, mortgage refinances as a result of interest rates dipping just ever so slightly in early July from 7%.
They haven't even, like, the market's dipped them, but the Fed actually hasn't even lowered rates. This is just the market guessing, like, oh, we think it's going to happen.
That already refinances jumped 15% the week of July 17th, which is a 2-year high, 37% higher than the same week a year ago. So I think you can just see that there's a lot of anticipation around interest rates. I mean, that almost dictates so many things.
That's right. This AT&T leak. This AT&T leak.
Yes,
I think is big, right?
There was a massive data breach at AT&T back in April that I wanted to talk about that it may have exposed up to 110 million people's call histories, but not their text messages. Hackers were able to access and steal the data.
It's okay, the NSA has those.
We're able to steal the data. You get to see all my NFL texts. That's all it is. Me and my buddy's like, no, they should have signed him. No, they should have traded him. The hackers were able to access and steal the data through an illegally downloaded app within the company. But I thought it was interesting because there are so many people who are thinking that they're off the grid or tech phobic, or they're trying to, not get their information out there. But I mean, this is a case of if you had a cell phone with AT&T, they got your stuff. Yeah.
And I got bad news for you, Dan. If you exist in the 21st century, your data's already been stolen. All of our data has been stolen many times over. The question is, anyone done anything with it, right? So Good news is neither of you or I are super celebrities, so no one cares.
Yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yet.
Sorry, I won't speak for you. So the bottom line is you just have to accept that's the way things are these days, and that you need to set up precautionary measures to protect yourself because someone could choose to pick on Dan Weir someday. That's just the way it is.
What a great way to end the episode. Thank you so much for checking out It's All Money. It's brought to you by Sonoma Wealth Advisors. You can learn more about Sonoma Wealth Advisors, Daren included, at sonomawealth.com.
This content was produced by Fermata Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. DBA, Sonoma Wealth Advisors. The opinions expressed by Fermata Advisors LLC on this show are their own. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Viewers and listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.